$250 a night. That's what my lake house was being rented out for without my knowledge. I stared at my screen in disbelief as I scrolled through the listing. My photos were there, every last one of them, showing off the interior I had grown up in. It was clear someone had turned my family sanctuary into their own personal ATM. The HOA president, Diane Morgan, a polished, well-dressed woman with a reputation for being strict, had been running this scheme for months. Dozens of 5-star reviews, strangers coming and going every few days. And the most shocking part? She even used a photo of me on the dock, fishing rod in hand, with a caption that read, "The friendly owner will share his best fishing tips." That picture came from my social media page, years old, but still, it hit hard. As I looked closer at the listing, something else caught my eye. In one shot, Diane was showing off the kitchen, and on her wrist was an expensive Rolex. In another photo, designer shopping bags peeked out from behind the couch. Whoever she was, she had expensive tastes, and she was funding them by renting out my house. I booked the next flight to Colorado. When I arrived at Silver Pine Estates, everything looked just like I remembered: pristine lawns, beautiful homes, and the sparkling waters of Crystal Lake. But nothing could prepare me for what I was about to uncover. My Uncle James had left me the house 6 months ago, and it meant everything to me. Orphaned at a young age, I spent every summer there with him, learning how to fish, watching sunsets, making memories that shaped who I became. And now, Diane had taken that away, turning it into a vacation rental without my permission. Olivia Martinez, a neighbor and friend of my uncle, filled in the blanks. Diane had told everyone I'd authorized her to manage the property while I was away. She even had keys to every house in the neighborhood under the HOA's emergency access policy, something Olivia said had never been used like this before. And then there were the bizarre new rules Diane had put in place. Windows couldn't be open more than 45 degrees, no fishing after 7 p.m., and violations came with hefty fines. All of it seemed designed to keep people in line while she profited in secret. Back in my rental car, I studied the listing again, trying to piece together a plan. That's when I noticed something strange, a photo tucked away in my uncle's study that I hadn't seen before. It showed a younger James with a woman by the lake. Something about her face looked familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. I called Jason Brooks, my best friend from college and a real estate attorney. He agreed to help and booked the house under his name, so Diane wouldn't recognize me. Meanwhile, I discovered the rental account belonged to Crystal Lake Luxury Rentals, a company that didn't exist in any business registry I checked. That night, I parked across the street from my house, watching as Diane pulled into the driveway in a luxury SUV. A driver stepped out with shopping bags, and she strutted inside like she owned the place. I texted Jason, "You're not going to believe what's happening." Little did Diane know I had installed security cameras throughout the house when I inherited it. Clear signs posted everywhere. "This area is under video surveillance." Signs she had ignored, or worse, tried to hide. The next evening, I arrived at my own front door with a weekend bag, heart pounding. I rang the doorbell, checking in under Jason's reservation using the fake name Nathan Brooks. The door swung open to reveal a young man named Ryan, who introduced himself as someone who helped manage the property. As I walked inside, the surreal feeling was overwhelming. Everything was slightly off, furniture rearranged, new decorations, family photos hidden. Ryan gave me a tour, clearly uncomfortable when pointing out things I didn't remember adding. I casually asked, "The owner has excellent taste." Ryan's expression flickered. "Yeah, the owner's rarely here. My mother handles everything." Before I could ask more, Diane herself walked in confident, dressed impeccably, Rolex gleaming. She extended her hand with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You must be Mr. Brooks. I'm Diane Morgan, property manager for Noah Whitman. He's an old friend who trusts me completely with his beautiful home." I shook her hand, keeping my expression neutral. "How do you know the owner?" I asked. She launched into a made-up story about how we'd met, how I supposedly trusted her fully while I was busy with my tech career in California. Each lie made my blood boil, but I stayed composed. Later that night, alone in the study, I found something disturbing. My uncle's safe had been tampered with. Inside, instead of important documents, was a folder of forged paperwork with my name on it. Diane wasn't just renting my house. She was forging my signature and manipulating HOA records. I immediately called Jason. "It's worse than we thought," I told him. "She's forged my signature. This goes beyond unauthorized renting." As we talked, I found an envelope that had fallen behind the desk, a letter from Uncle James addressed to me. It mentioned something cryptic about telling my son the truth. Before I could think more about it, Ryan sent me a message. "Be careful with my mom. She's planning to sell this house." The game had changed. Morning came, and I sipped coffee on the deck, pretending to be just another guest. But I was preparing for battle. Amber Reynolds, a writer staying in the guest suite, joined me. "Didn't expect all the drama with the property manager," she said with a sigh. "Diane charged me $150 for taking a bath instead of a shower. Said it was some HOA water conservation rule." We talked more, and Amber revealed Diane had been showing the house to potential buyers late at night. I texted Olivia, who met me at a local cafe. She handed me a notebook full of documented HOA abuses, arbitrary fines, rule changes without votes, financial mismanagement. "She's even renting out 2 other houses," Olivia whispered. "Owners who only come seasonally." Jason arrived soon after, and we mapped out our strategy. Then came the knock at the sliding door. Diane was back, this time with Ryan and a man she introduced as William Foster, a maintenance specialist. But as they spoke, it became obvious he was no handyman. He mentioned something about the property's lakefront potential and a starting offer of $700,000, far below its actual value of $1.2 million. Diane wasn't just renting my house. She was planning to sell it fast, for a quick commission. Enough was enough. Taking a deep breath, I stepped into the room. "Actually," I said calmly, "the owner isn't overseas, and he definitely hasn't authorized a sale." I introduced myself. "I'm Noah Whitman. This is my house. And you're trespassing." The room froze. Diane's face went from confusion to shock to anger. She insisted she had proper paperwork, forged documents with my name on them. I pulled out my ID, the property deed, and footage from the security cameras showing her entering the house repeatedly, bringing in personal items, and showing it off to potential buyers. William quickly excused himself, handing me his card as he left. Diane called the police, claiming I was an intruder. They arrived shortly after, and Diane spun her story, that she was managing the property with my consent. But I calmly presented my identification, the deed, and the camera footage. Ryan stood silently, refusing to back up his mother's lies. The officers seemed unsure how to handle it, finally advising us to resolve the matter legally. As they left, I noticed Diane whispering to the senior officer, a sign she had connections. Minutes later, my phone buzzed. The security system had been disabled. When I returned to the house, the locks had been changed. Through the window, I saw Diane and Ryan hurriedly gathering papers. I called the police again, but it would be over an hour before anyone could respond. Convenient timing. Jason warned me Diane was escalating, trying to control access to the evidence inside the house. Then came a text from William. "Just heard from Diane that you're having a mental health episode and falsely claiming ownership. Are you really the owner?" She was already spinning a narrative to discredit me. I confronted Ryan outside. "You know what your mom is doing is wrong," I said. He hesitated. "She's desperate," he muttered. "Medical bills. Failed investments. She's about to lose everything." It didn't justify what she'd done, but it offered some context. Then Diane reappeared, this time with an attorney. She handed me a document, an official notice claiming I'd violated numerous HOA regulations and owed $15,000 in fines. Until these violations are addressed, she announced smugly, the HOA has placed restrictions on this property. Jason tore through the document, pointing out violations dated before I'd even inherited the house. "This is harassment," he said. "And you know it." Diane's mask slipped for a moment. "You abandoned this community for 6 months," she spat. "Didn't attend a single meeting, didn't introduce yourself, didn't maintain the property. People like you buy vacation homes and neglect them. I was doing this neighborhood a service." "A service?" I repeated. "By stealing from me? By lying to everyone?" Neighbors began gathering, drawn by the commotion. Diane faltered. She grabbed the attorney's arm and retreated into the house, locking the door behind them. Ryan stayed in his car watching. Forced to leave my own property, I checked into a local hotel with Jason. "She's banking on you giving up," he observed as I paced the room. People often do when facing HOA battles, the stress, the cost of fighting, the community pressure. But she didn't count on you having evidence of criminal activity, not just rule violations. We began crafting a strategic response, dividing our approach between legal action against Diane personally and challenging the HOA's authority to restrict my access. As we worked, I received an email from my security company confirming that their system had been manually disconnected from inside the house, a clear violation of the police's instructions. Meanwhile, through the window, I could see Diane's car arriving at the hotel. "She's following me," I realized with disbelief. Later that evening, returning from dinner, I found an official letter from the HOA slipped under my hotel room door. It detailed alleged historical violations dating back months before I owned the property, with accumulated fines now exceeding $15,000. More disturbingly, it claimed the HOA had the right to place a lien on my property if the fines remained unpaid, potentially forcing a sale to recover costs. Jason examined the letter with growing concern. "Some of this language seems to reference HOA powers that aren't standard in Colorado," he noted. "We need to see the actual filed HOA covenant documents, not whatever version Diane is working from." My phone buzzed with a notification, an email from Ryan sent to my rental account. It contained a structural engineering report about my house marked confidential, HOA emergency action required. The report was clearly fabricated, citing non-existent foundation issues supposedly requiring immediate intervention, justifying the lock changes. But Ryan had made a crucial mistake in forwarding it. The document properties showed it had been created just hours earlier, not weeks ago as dated. Furthermore, the original recipient list included several HOA board members, revealing who else might be complicit in Diane's schemes. "This is exactly what we needed," Jason said, his expression brightening. "Documented evidence of fraud and conspiracy." As we developed our counterattack strategy, I felt conflicted about Ryan's action. Was it an intentional leak or a careless mistake? Either way, it provided critical ammunition. Looking out the window at the darkened lake in the distance, I felt a renewed determination. My uncle's beloved home, the site of my happiest childhood memories, was being used as a pawn in Diane's desperate financial games. I was ready to give up, I admitted to Jason. But now she's pushed me too far. It's time to show her what happens when you steal a house from someone with nothing left to lose. The next morning brought another shock. While Jason met with the county clerk to obtain official copies of the HOA covenant documents, I discovered that Diane had launched a smear campaign against me. Several neighbors had received emails describing me as an irresponsible absentee owner whose neglect endangered property values. She claimed my sudden appearance was part of a scheme to avoid paying legitimate HOA fines. One sympathetic resident forwarded me the message, asking if I was really the mentally unstable squatter Diane described. The character assassination was comprehensive. She had even created a fake timeline of incidents, portraying herself as the victim of my harassment. My initial anger gave way to a strange calm. Diane's increasingly desperate tactics confirmed she knew her position was crumbling. Jason returned with crucial information. The official HOA documents bore little resemblance to what Diane had been enforcing. She's been operating under her own made-up rules, he explained, spreading the papers across the hotel desk. The actual covenants don't grant the powers she's claiming. The fines, the access restrictions, the property liens, they're all overreach or completely fabricated. When I asked why no one had challenged her before, Jason shook his head. HOAs operate on intimidation and apathy. Most homeowners don't read the fine print, and fighting takes time and money that most people don't want to spend. Plus, Diane has created an environment where questioning her means becoming her next target. This revelation strengthened our position legally but didn't solve our immediate problem. I was still locked out of my own house. While formulating our next steps, I received an unexpected text message requesting a meeting at a local coffee shop. It was Ryan. After debating whether it might be a trap, I decided to go, asking Jason to wait nearby as a precaution. Ryan was already there when I arrived, hunched over a coffee, looking like he hadn't slept. "I can't do this anymore," he said without preamble. "What my mother is doing, it's wrong. It's been wrong for years, but this is different." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were financial statements showing Diane had diverted over $200,000 from the HOA maintenance fund into personal accounts over the past 3 years. There were also emails about her plans to sell my house at a below-market price to a developer friend who would kick back a consulting fee to her. "She's underwater financially," Ryan explained, voice barely above a whisper. "Bad investments, medical bills she won't tell anyone about, and a lifestyle she can't actually afford. She's terrified of losing her status in the community." The documents Ryan provided were damning, but his next revelation hit me harder. "There's something else you should know," he said, pulling out what looked like a personal letter. "I found this in my mother's desk. It's from your uncle, James." The letter, dated shortly before my uncle's death, referenced a past relationship and expressed regret about keeping the truth from Ryan. A cold realization washed over me. As Ryan continued, "I think your uncle was my father. My mother never talks about my dad, just says he abandoned us before I was born. But I found old photos, letters. I think they had a relationship years ago that ended badly. I think that's why she hated him so much." "Why she hates you?" The possibilities stunned me into silence. Could Diane's vendetta be rooted in a decades-old romantic rejection? Was Ryan actually my cousin? Our conversation was cut short when Ryan received multiple texts from his mother demanding his immediate return. "She's organizing an emergency HOA meeting tonight to formally begin foreclosure proceedings on your property," he warned, standing to leave. "She's rushing it through while you're locked out, claiming continuous rule violations. Most board members just rubber stamp whatever she wants." Before departing, Ryan handed me one more item, a key. "It's for the back deck door. She had the front locks changed, but forgot about this one." I made a copy. With a nod of acknowledgement that carried the weight of his betrayal of his mother, he slipped away. I sat there processing this new information, the financial fraud, the personal vendetta, and most surprisingly, the possibility of a familial connection to Ryan. Jason and I immediately began constructing a counteroffensive. The emergency HOA meeting provided the perfect opportunity to expose Diane to the entire community at once. Using the financial documents Ryan provided, we prepared a presentation with irrefutable evidence of her misconduct. Olivia helped us contact as many homeowners as possible, encouraging them to attend the meeting rather than submitting proxy votes that Diane could manipulate. By late afternoon, we had assembled a coalition of residents fed up with Diane's tyrannical rule, previously too intimidated to speak out. "This isn't just about your house anymore," Olivia told me as we finalized our plans. "It's about taking back our community from someone who's abused her position for years." Using Ryan's key, Jason and I entered my house through the back door to retrieve personal items and additional evidence. The place had been further ransacked, drawers emptied, documents scattered, family photos removed from frames. In Uncle James' study, the safe stood open and empty. We worked quickly, knowing Diane might return at any moment. I found my laptop hidden under the mattress where I'd concealed it, containing backups of the security footage. As we prepared to leave, I noticed something odd. A box of my uncle's old cassette tapes had been dumped out, with one tape partially rewound, as if someone had been listening to it. I pocketed it, thinking it might contain something important if Diane had been interested in it. Back at the hotel, facing the biggest confrontation of my life, I experienced a moment of doubt. Fighting Diane meant potentially exposing painful family secrets, engaging in a public battle with uncertain outcomes, and further delaying my return to normal life. The easier path would be selling the house and walking away. As if sensing my wavering resolve, Jason placed a hand on my shoulder. "Your uncle fought to keep this place in the family. He wanted you to have it, not just the property, but the memories it holds." His words cut through my hesitation. This house represented the only real family connection I had left. "You're right," I told him, determination returning. I was ready to give up, but Diane's pushed me too far. It's time to end her reign of terror over Silver Pine Estates once and for all. The community center buzzed with tension as homeowners filed in for the emergency HOA meeting. Word had spread quickly, and attendance was unusually high. Jason and I arrived early to set up our presentation, only to find the doors locked with a hastily posted sign, "Meeting relocated to Lakeside Pavilion. HA members only." It was Diane's first countermove, changing venues to confuse people and attempt to control attendance. Fortunately, Olivia had anticipated this tactic and was already redirecting residents to the new location. When we arrived at the pavilion, a security guard Diane had hired blocked my entrance. "HA members only," he repeated mechanically. "I have Ms. Morgan's explicit instructions that you are not authorized to attend." Jason stepped forward with copies of my property deed and HOA membership documentation, but the guard remained unmoved. "Fine," I said after several fruitless minutes of argument. "I'll wait out here." As soon as the guard returned to his post, I nodded to Olivia, who was already implementing our backup plan. She entered the meeting while activating a live video stream to my phone. Thomas Wilson, the reluctant board member who had provided financial documents, had positioned a laptop at the front of the room, ostensibly for meeting minutes, but actually ready to display our evidence when the moment came. It was a makeshift operation, but our only option given Diane's escalating obstruction. Through Olivia's stream, I watched Diane call the meeting to order, looking confident in an expensive suit accented by her ever-present Rolex. She wasted no time launching into a monologue about protecting community standards and addressing the troubling situation with the Whitman property. The meeting's agenda projected on screen listed a vote to enforce significant violations through a property lien as the main item. Diane painted me as a negligent owner who had abandoned the property, allowing it to deteriorate while ignoring HOA communications. The fines now exceeded $15,000, she announced gravely. As per our bylaws, we must protect neighboring property values by placing a lien that may necessitate a forced sale if the violations remain unaddressed. She neglected to mention that most of these violations were either fabricated or predated my ownership. When she called for discussion before the vote, several homeowners raised hands with questions, but Diane recognized only those she knew supported her position. Just as she was moving to call the vote, Olivia stood up without being recognized. "Before we vote, I think we should discuss some concerning financial discrepancies in our HOA accounts." Diane attempted to shut her down, citing adherence to the agenda, but Olivia persisted. She approached the front of the room, tablet in hand, and connected it to the presentation system before Diane could object. "I've prepared a quick review of our HOA finances that members might find relevant to today's decisions." As Diane tried to physically block the screen, Olivia distributed printed packets to the attendees, copies of what she'd titled Top 10 Craziest HOA Rules, designed and made up, along with financial statements showing questionable transactions. A ripple of murmurs and shocked expressions spread through the room as residents reviewed the documents. Diane's face flushed with anger as she tried to regain control of the meeting. "These allegations are completely false and potentially libelous," she declared, voice rising. "This is an unauthorized hijacking of official HOA business." But the momentum had shifted. Thomas Wilson, finding unexpected courage, stood up. "As treasurer, I can confirm these financial records are accurate and concerning. We've never had a proper audit during Diane's tenure, despite my repeated requests." More residents began asking pointed questions about specific expenditures in the actual text of the HOA covenants versus what Diane had been enforcing. Jason, who had managed to enter during the commotion, approached the podium with the official county records. "The actual filed HOA documents do not grant the powers Ms. Morgan has been exercising," he announced, his voice carrying across the now silent room. Sensing her control slipping away, Diane attempted one last desperate move. She pulled out her phone and began a social media live stream, apparently planning to present her own counter-narrative. "I need to document this harassment for legal purposes," she announced. "These people are attempting to undermine legitimate HOA authority with baseless accusations." But her plan backfired spectacularly. Unknown to Diane, Ryan had accessed her phone earlier and reconfigured her streaming accounts. Instead of broadcasting her version of events, her phone was displaying all the incriminating emails and documents Ryan had discovered, including her plans to sell my house, records of diverted HOA funds, and even text messages to the security company instructing them to disable my cameras, in direct violation of police instructions. The room erupted in chaos as Diane realized what was happening. She frantically tried to stop the stream, but the damage was done. Simultaneously, I joined the meeting via video call on Thomas's laptop, finally able to address the homeowners directly. "My name is Noah Whitman," I began calmly. "6 months ago, I inherited this house from my uncle, James Whitman. Since then, Diane Morgan has been renting it out without my knowledge or consent, pocketing over $15,000 in rental income, forging my signature on HOA documents, and now attempting to force a sale based on fabricated violations." I shared my screen, showing security footage of Diane bringing in renters, hosting potential buyers, and removing items from the house. The expressions of the homeowners ranged from shock to outrage as the full extent of the deception became clear. Diane, cornered and exposed, switched tactics from denial to attack. "You don't understand what it takes to maintain a community like this," she shouted, gesturing wildly at the assembled residents. "I've dedicated years to protecting your property values while you all complain about dues and regulations." Her defense quickly devolved into accusations against various homeowners for their own rule violations, burning what little goodwill might have remained. As calls for her resignation grew louder, Thomas Wilson proposed an emergency vote to remove Diane from the HOA board pending investigation. The motion passed almost unanimously. Someone had called the police, and officers were arriving to take statements about the financial allegations that crossed into criminal territory. As Diane realized the extent of her defeat, she played her final card. "This isn't over," she announced, suddenly composed despite her crumbling world. "Noah Whitman isn't the legitimate owner of that property. I have evidence that James Whitman left 50% ownership of the house to the HOA in a second will, one that his opportunistic nephew has conveniently ignored." She produced a document with what appeared to be my uncle's signature. "This house partially belongs to the community, not just to him." The room fell into stunned silence as she smiled triumphantly. Even with her power collapsing around her, Diane Morgan had managed to create one last twist, threatening everything I'd fought for.